My boyfriend acts like a child, so I decided to break up with him on the ninth day of our vacation. Backstory: I, F32, and BF, M43, have been together for almost 8 years. We met at work, both have our own homes and finances, but have had a good relationship for the last 8 or so years. However, currently we are on our third annual foreign holiday. We are both European and holidaying in a European resort. My BF refused to wear sunscreen day one and got badly burnt on our first full day. After 48 hours, he was in a bad way. We are both pale northern Europeans and just burn rather than tan. So I got aloe vera, after sun, pain relief, antihistamines, etc. to help ease his discomfort, but for one whole day he was confined to the hotel room. Edit. Not to blow my own trumpet, but I walked up hills and navigated the Spanish language to get what was needed. I did my best to sympathize and get what he needed, but I have to admit I was pissed. We both work very hard, and we both do well-paying jobs. Originally met at work, but in different roles. We both work hard all year and have one breakaway together. It's the third year in a row he refused to wear sunscreen on a foreign holiday because he doesn't like how it feels on his skin, and also refuses to take pain relief/anti-inflammatories unless I begged him to take a them to help. At that moment, I was sitting on our hotel balcony, watching the tourists splashing carefree in the pool, and I thought, why does the same thing always happen? Instead of enjoying the sun, the sea, and the rare opportunity to relax, I was once again carrying everything on my shoulders, caring for him, the responsibility for our vacation, and my own disappointment. He lay in the room complaining of pain and groaning every time he rolled over. I tried to help him, but at the same time, I felt irritation rising inside. After all, this wasn't an accident, not some unforeseen situation. This was something that could have been avoided. All it took was a minute to apply some cream. But no, he was a grown man who stubbornly acted like a teenager. I remembered that this wasn't the first time. Every year we argue about this stupid habit. Every year he says, I hate this sticky feeling on my skin, it's unpleasant. Every year he burns like a lobster, and then ends up in bed with a fever and a bad mood. And every year I run to pharmacies looking for gels, applying them to him, trying to persuade him to take at least a pill. This time, I also found myself in a half-empty pharmacy somewhere off the main tourist strip, where no one spoke English. I had to brush up on my school Spanish and explain with my fingers that I needed sunscreen, not just moisturizer. I left the pharmacy sweaty and angry with a bag of half-assed products, but feeling like I wasn't on vacation, but on a survival mission. I did all this and caught myself thinking, who cares about me anyway? I'm tired too. I've been working nonstop all year too. This trip is my only chance to recharge. But instead, I feel like his mother, his nurse, his nanny again. I was sitting in a cafe near the hotel, watching couples my age laugh, order cocktails, and hug. And me? I'm with a man 10 years older than me who acts like he's 15 and just visiting the beach for the first time. This thought hit me particularly hard. If this is how he is now, what will he be like in 20 years? A stubborn old man who refuses to take his medication and believes he'd rather endure pain than admit he needs help? I knew men like this all too well. I work in healthcare, and I see every day how stubbornness and denial destroy people. And watching my own partner go down the same path was unbearable. Those 2 days locked in the room seemed longer to me than our entire 8-year relationship. I tried to talk to him, tried to explain that it was his own fault, but he brushed me off like a child uncomfortable with the truth, and something inside me broke. I suddenly felt like I didn't want to save him anymore. I wanted to relax. I wanted to laugh, walk along the beach, try the local food. I wanted to feel light, not carry around a man who can't even apply ointment without throwing a tantrum. And for the first time in years, I thought, maybe it's time to stop arguing and end things. On the third day of my vacation, I sat alone on the beach. The sun was already setting. Families were gathering their things. Children were racing to the water, and I looked at it all and tried to remember the last time I truly enjoyed our trips. Maybe the first couple of years when everything seemed new and exciting, when we enjoyed every glass of wine on the terrace, every stroll through the narrow streets, and then something changed. I found myself increasingly taking on the adult role in our relationship over the past few years. I decide where we go, book tickets, find hotels, pack a first aid kit just in case. I make sure we have our documents on hand, that we don't get lost, that the trip goes smoothly. At best, he simply agrees, and at worst, he gets annoyed if he doesn't like something. I increasingly feel like I'm a mother with a teenage child, not a woman with a man 11 years older. I feel like I'm being deprived of a partnership. In a healthy relationship, both contribute, both care for each other. But with us, the care always flows in one direction. It's not just on vacation. When I bought my house, I dreamed of him helping me decorate it, of us going to IKEA together to pick out furniture, laughing about how I couldn't assemble a shelf, arguing over the color of the curtains. But instead, he sighed heavily when I asked him to go with me, and he did so as if I were dragging him off to prison. I remember standing in the store, me trying to choose a sofa, and he just scrolled through his phone, waiting for it to be over. And yet, when it came to his friends' affairs, sitting for their pets, helping them move, picking someone up from the train station, he did it without any problem, even enthusiastically. But with me, he was always tired, always dissatisfied, always hurry up. Even when we visited my family, he couldn't hide his irritation. I'd ask him to bring board games. He adores them. It's his hobby, and he could talk for hours about new mechanics or collector's editions. You'd think he'd enjoy it. But no, he'd look at me as if I were asking him to carry a sack of potatoes, and then he'd frown down all evening. I'd smile, try to keep the conversation going, smooth things over, but inside, everything would clench. But when we were with his friends, I tried to fit in. I overcame my social anxiety, forced myself to be sociable, even when I just wanted to withdraw and sit in silence. I did it for him, and he pretended that the presence of my family or friends in my life was a burden. Over the years, I began to notice that he wasn't supportive or even genuinely interested in my life. When I talked about my plans, about buying a house, investing in the future, he seemed to shut me out. I hinted that I wanted to live together, that it was important to me that we share a home. He smiled, but did nothing. His own home needed some work, but he was in no hurry to fix it. I waited, hoped, then got tired of waiting, and took the plunge myself. I bought a house on my own, and I've never regretted it. I thought, if this is how he feels about our shared affairs, if he's always more comfortable staying in his comfort zone, then what next? I don't want to realize in 10 years that I wasted my best years on a man who always frowns when it comes to me and my desires. And so here I am, sitting here on the 9th day of our vacation, and I realize I have before my eyes a condensed image of all these years. His burn is a symbol of our entire relationship. He creates his own problem, refuses to solve it, and shifts the consequences onto me. And I run around looking for solutions, saving him, and all the while remaining angry, tired, and alone. I thought the vacation would help us get closer, give us a break from each other, but it's proven the opposite. I look at him and increasingly see not a man, but a child who hasn't grown up. When I think about the future, the first thing I think of is home. A place where I can feel safe, make plans, and come home from work and vacation. For several years, I've been gently pushing him to figure out how to find a place to live together. We're no longer students, not people who dated for a few months. 8 years together. That's almost my entire adult life. And it was natural to think about combining it with his. But every time I brought it up, he seemed to pull away. Well, we can discuss it later. Let's wait. I'm not sure now is the right time. His house needed some work. Old pipes, worn floors, peeling walls. I hinted that if he wanted me to move in, maybe he should fix it up, but he didn't budge. At first I was angry, then sad, then resigned, and one day I realized there was no point in waiting any longer. I have a job that brings in a good income. I have the desire and the strength, and I bought my own place. Without him, without talking, without making any joint decisions, simply because I couldn't allow myself to depend on his unwillingness to move forward. I remember the day I signed the papers. I felt a sense of pride, but also a hint of bitterness. Pride in myself, in the fact that I'd managed it. Bitterness at the fact that I was doing all this alone, even though I supposedly had a partner. I wanted to share this joy. I wanted him to support me, but instead, he greeted the news with indifference. He shrugged and said, well done. That was the first time I felt our paths were diverging. We seemed close, but we were going in different directions. I was making plans, thinking about the future, investing money and energy, and he was stuck somewhere in his own little swamp and he was comfortable. It was comfortable living in an old house, comfortable not having to stress, comfortable waiting for me to do everything for both of us. And perhaps that's why I don't regret taking this step myself. I have a home. It's cozy, maybe not perfect yet, but it's mine. Everything I buy in it reminds me, I can do it. I can build my life without him. And this discovery turned out to be much more important than I expected. At that moment, I realized that not only was he not moving forward, but he was actually holding me back. After all, if I'd kept waiting, I'd still be sitting in his old house thinking, well, maybe next year. But life goes on. I don't want to wake up at 40 and realize I'm still waiting for him to fix the kitchen faucet. And now that we're on vacation, this thought hits home especially hard, because vacation is also about home, only a temporary one. The hotel we chose, the beaches we stroll on. But even here, it's clear. I'm thinking about how to be comfortable, how beautiful it is, how we can see and experience more. And he's thinking about how to avoid unnecessary stress. Sunscreen is a small detail, but it symbolizes everything else. He doesn't think ahead, doesn't care about the consequences, doesn't take basic precautions. And then he sits there with burns, while I run to pharmacies. It's the same in life. He doesn't care about the future, and I'm forced to take it upon myself. And I increasingly think, why? Why should I drag someone who doesn't want to go? Why should I be a woman, a mother, and a nanny all rolled into one? I don't want to live like this, and that's probably why the thought of breaking up hasn't seemed so scary to me. On the contrary, it feels strangely relieving. Social situations have always been a litmus test for our relationship. I didn't realize this right away. At first, I chalked it up to fatigue, mood, season, weather. But the longer we went, the more clearly the same pattern emerged. Anything to do with my people, my affairs, my joys, tired him. But anything to do with his circle went swimmingly. When I bought the house, I pictured our first joint expedition to IKEA so vividly that I'm surprised I had the strength not to burst into tears, when instead he was standing in the kitchen department, scrolling through his phone and sighing heavily every now and then, as if we were waiting for a dentist appointment. I ran between samples, comparing cabinetry, searching for that perfect wood shade, and he answered questions with monosyllables. It's fine. What's the difference? Do it your way. It seemed like freedom of choice. Do it your way. But in reality, it meant I'm not participating. In the parking lot, I said, but you fly to your friends' houses in no time, even if you have to sit with their dog for half a day. He shrugged. But I promised them. And that simple phrase haunted me. I promised them, but what about me? It was similar with my family. We visit my parents less often. I live in a different city. There's the commute, plans, all of it needs to be juggled. Sometimes I'd ask, would you like some board games? Dad's been wanting to play them for ages. Mom will love them. You have so many great games and you love explaining the rules yourself. And every time, the same sighs, the same half-strangled tone, as if I were asking him to lug a piano up to the 9th floor. Several times, he'd completely forget, and once he'd bring a small box just for show and spend the entire evening on his phone. When I left, I'd joke with my parents, saying we'd definitely play next time. At home, he'd say, yours are loud and their jokes are weird. Meanwhile, 6 grown men would gather at his house, discussing new releases, arguing about mechanics, and I, a person with social anxiety, would sit there, sipping tea and trying to get as involved as I could. And yes, I was polite, making an effort so that no one would feel awkward because of me. He took it as the norm. He didn't even praise me. He simply didn't notice. There was one episode that somehow stuck in my memory more than others. It was a friend's birthday, a small gathering at home. I'd warned them beforehand. They're younger, it might be a little loud, but we won't be long. He nodded half-heartedly. 20 minutes after we arrived, he began to huff and puff quietly, those same exhalations of his that everyone nearby can hear. I pretended not to notice, so as not to ruin the evening. I listened to his stories, laughed, and joined in. On the way back, he said, "What a party." I gritted my teeth and replied, "You don't have to like my people, but you do have to respect that they're my people." He fell silent and stared out the window, and I drove along wondering, do I have the right to huff and puff at his parties? Or is my right only to smile? A similar static effect can be seen in small things, I ask. Would you like to stop by my store for some light bulbs? There's a long line later. A friend calls him, "I need to move a couple of boxes, can you help me out?" And he's already at the door, cheerful and smiling. I ask, "Let's make a reservation, I want to go somewhere together." "Let's eat at home, I'm tired from work." But if his friends invite him to a meeting, he's capable of putting off anything. And it's not about jealousy, it's about priorities lining up in such a way that I find myself at the end of the line. Even in cases where I asked for something simple, human, be there for me in my little joys. We were always honest financially. We split the bills, and it didn't bother me that I earned a little less. I still contributed my share. It didn't bother me that I drove a lot. I really do enjoy being behind the wheel. But gradually, I noticed, the more I took on, the more he retreated. It was as if he heard every "I can handle it" of mine as "I can handle it without you." Washing the dishes after his friends, cooking something quick, and giving someone a ride along the way, everything became my domain, where he was just a guest. Paradoxically, the more independent I became, the less of a partner I felt. Sometimes I wondered if the problem was me. Maybe I was too demanding? I'd had moments in the past that I was ashamed of. Twice in 8 years, I got terribly drunk, we argued, I apologized, we talked it out, and it never happened again. I have social anxiety, and I'm not always the easiest person to be around. But then I put the facts together. Even when I make an effort, there's silence. Even when I enter his reality, he's in no hurry to enter mine. And this "in no hurry" cut especially sharply right now on vacation. After all, vacation is the space where couples test their compatibility. How much are you willing to do for mutual pleasure? I sat on the lounger, sunburned, not me, having picked up everything possible from pharmacies. And I thought, it would be so simple now to say thank you, to admit my mistake, to slather myself in sunscreen next time without the ego dialogues about stickiness. But even in this situation, he managed to act like a child. "I don't like it, it's unpleasant, I'll put up with it." And yes, it's just sunscreen, but behind it drags a whole life of "I don't like it, so I don't do it." It's unpleasant, so I'll be mean. I'll put up with it and let the one next to me pay. There's another detail I hadn't noticed before. I thought he simply didn't like noise. But when it came to his noise, games, arguments, discussions, he blossomed, became light, flexible, charming. So it's not about the noise. It's about his desire to engage or not engage in my meanings. We've been together for 8 years, but it feels like he's never truly delved into my frame of reference. And not because it's complicated, because it requires effort. A small effort, but an effort nonetheless. And in this, "I try," he huffs and puffs scenario, a thought shone especially vividly, one that simultaneously terrified and calmed me. I've been living as an independent individual for a long time now, not as a half, and there's no tragedy in that. It's honesty. I can organize a trip, buy a house, renovate, spend an evening with his friends. I can do a lot. But do I want to do all that with a man who, year after year, shows me that his "I don't love him" is more important than our "I need him"? On the evening of the 9th day, I walked along the embankment and caught my reflection in the shop window mirrors. Tired, yes, but clear. You're either part of my team or you're not. And a team isn't when I'm pulling 2 people together. It's when 2 people pull together, and sometimes one lets go of their rightness for the sake of the shared journey. I'm not asking for heroism. I'm asking for some sunscreen, figuratively speaking too. I knew there would be a conversation ahead. Not on vacation, not in the heat of the moment, but at home where the walls remember our history but don't eavesdrop on the cries of the neighboring seagulls. I would choose words without accusations and with facts. And I would say the most important thing, I need a partner, not a son. I need support, not sticky. I need action, not size. I am no longer ready to be the only adult in the room. And more importantly, I finally allowed myself to consider something I'd previously brushed aside. If there's no answer, I have the right to leave. Not into drama, not into nowhere, but into my own life, where my requests don't sound like obsessions, but are perceived as normal human needs. At this point, the sea lapped against the rocks so smoothly that for the first time in days, I felt calm. Tomorrow will be the 10th day, and for the first time in a long time, I seem to have a plan in which I'm not betraying myself. The 9th day started with a minor detail, but it's the minor minor details that make up what you later call impossible to continue. I returned from the beach early to have breakfast with him. He sat on the balcony, kneading his shoulders, wincing at the slightest touch of his t-shirt, and with the air of a martyr, dabbing at his burns. Not with cream, but with something he thought was less sticky. When I suggested a proper SPF for tomorrow, he dismissed it with a wave of his hand. Enough already, I've already applied it. Something inside me briefly clicked. Once again, I was being asked to live on his as-is, his bare minimum, which for some reason was supposed to suit both of us. I made coffee, laid out fruit, water, and pills on the table, that same maternal still life that had been looming large around me all these years. Here's your painkiller. Here's your water. Here's a reminder not to scratch. Here's a request not to burn again tomorrow. And I caught myself making a hand gesture, habitual to the point of automatism. I'm not a lover or a companion. I'm a dispatcher of someone else's responsibility. And the better I manage this, the less reason he has to change anything. We strolled along the embankment. He walked carefully like a man who dislikes pain and doesn't like admitting he's caused it for himself. The shadows from the palm trees were harsh, and the scent of fried fish and sunscreen, everyone around him, except us, was everywhere. He was looking for souvenirs for his friends, choosing postcards, and becoming animated when the conversation turned to someone's preferences. I listened and thought that in his world, there was always someone for whom he could easily go from I don't want to I will. It just wasn't me. At one point, he asked, "No beach today?" I'd rather relax in the room, and it made sense. My skin was burning, but my yes echoed that same morning. I've had enough. I agreed. We stopped at the supermarket, and I picked up some yogurt, some ice for a compress, and some more aloe. In line ahead of us, a couple was arguing about wine for the evening, and I was putting the necessary items in my basket, as if these purchases were what would keep our vacation from falling apart completely. He fell asleep in the room. I sat by the window, opened my laptop, but instead of email, I opened a blank page and began writing as if I were at a reception with myself. I listed without embellishment. 3 years in a row, burns, conversations about sharing a place, later, IKEA, size, my people, irritation, his people, priority, small requests, well, it's nothing, close-ups, silence, and 2 more points that I always hide at the bottom. First, I know how to be wrong. There is an evening in my biography that I was ashamed of, and we survived it. Second, it is precisely because I know how to admit it that it is so hard for me to look at the male 40-year-old reluctance to take responsibility at, if I don't love, then I won't. I work with this every day, with bodies that pay for the habit of tolerating. I know how it ends, and I'm tired of living next to the trailer of this future. That evening, we went out to dinner. He chose a restaurant, a quiet courtyard, tiled floors, a fountain, a menu in 4 languages. We ordered fish. He asked for beer. I said, "Just not in the sun tomorrow." He snorted, "As if you were my mother." And then, instead of the usual swallow it, I smiled and replied calmly, "It's probably because you're acting like a child." We both fell silent. The plate suddenly felt heavier. He turned away. I took a sip of water and felt a strange relief, the kind that comes when you call a spade a spade. We finished eating almost in silence. We walked back along streets where tourists were buying ice cream. A musician was playing something on the guitar, and children were running between tables. I looked at these scenes as if through a glass. Beautiful, but not for us. In the room, he turned on the TV and found a football report. I closed the balcony door to block out the sound. And there, between the Tool and the lights of the neighboring hotel, I made a decision I'd been considering for a long time. I won't debrief you on vacation. I won't make a spectacle of it. Not for him, not for myself. We'll fly home, I'll put on tea in my kitchen, sit across from you, and say without labels or accusations, "I don't feel like your partner. I'm tired of being the only adult. I need someone who takes their share, from the cream to the plans. I'll offer a break, not as a punishment, but as an honest pause. Let each of you ask yourself what you're willing to do in reality, not just in words. And if the answer isn't do, then don't bother. Then we'll part without a fight." I thought about what he might say. "You're pressuring me. You're always over-dramatizing." Well, it's just that my vacation wasn't going well. And I prepared simple phrases in my head. No defense or attack. No, this isn't a vacation. It's a habit. I feel cold in it. Yes, I can be inconvenient, but I go. I fix things. I do things. I want someone by my side who at least doesn't get in the way of me carrying 2 people. No, I don't have to wait another year for you to decide on trivial things. I didn't rehearse speeches. I rehearsed silence. How not to make excuses when they try to make me the villain in their story. When he fell asleep, I sat on the edge of his bed and caught myself in a tender moment. There really is a lot that's good about him. He knows how to be kind to strangers. He knows how to talk about games in a way that makes your eyes light up. He knows how to fix little things without you noticing. We have a lot to remember. First trips, spontaneous Sunday breakfasts, funny text messages when we were both stuck at work. And maybe that's why I hesitated for so long. Because you can always find a day in your memory when things were normal. But memory is a poor architect of the future. A normal life can't be built from the best moments if ordinary days drag you down. I lay down, closed my eyes, and fell asleep quickly for the first time in 9 days. In the morning, we ate breakfast on autopilot, agreed on a time to leave for the airport, and he asked if I wanted to bring anything home for my colleagues. I said I just wanted to get home. He didn't get it, and that was fine. I used to miss the obvious, too. On the plane, I stared out the window and counted the clouds like steps. The line we still represented two people, but I finally had a handrail. Sometimes just holding on tightly to it was enough to stop myself from falling. And tomorrow it seemed I'd have the strength to hold my side of the conversation. Not with the voice of a mother, not with the voice of a rescuer, but with the voice of a woman who had finally stopped confusing, caring for another with self-denial. We returned home late in the evening. Our suitcases stood in the hallway, like two strangers with no one to unpack them. We were both exhausted from the journey, but I knew there was no point in putting it off any longer. If I remained silent, the familiar "let's do it later" would return, and that later would drag on for another year, for a lifetime. I put the kettle on, got out 2 mugs, and called him into the kitchen. He came in, sleepy and irritated, still wearing his vacation t-shirt, and sat down across from me, not looking at me. I felt my heart pounding, but this time there was no fear, only calm. "We need to talk," I said. He looked up. He sighed, as he always does when he's expecting another small talk, but I didn't let him devalue the moment. "I don't feel like your partner anymore. I feel like your mother, who's the one who's bringing you cream, pills, plans, decisions. I'm tired of being the only adult in this couple." He opened his mouth as if to object, but I continued. "I don't want to fight. I want honesty. I need a man by my side, not a teenager who refuses simple things every time and shifts the consequences onto others. I suggest we take a break, for both of us, so that we can each understand what we really want." The silence hung thick as syrup. He was silent for a long time. Then he muttered, "You're being dramatic. It's just a vacation gone wrong." I looked straight into his eyes. "No, it's been 8 years. It's a habit. It's all been building up, and I've been putting up with it. It just became too obvious on vacation." He turned away, then back to me. For the first time in a long time, he was unprotected, without his usual bravado. Just a tired man who realized I was serious. "So what now?" he asked quietly. "Now everyone lives their own lives until it becomes clear whether we can walk together. And if we can't, then we shouldn't." We finished our tea in silence. I went into the bedroom, closed the door, and for the first time in months fell asleep without feeling like I had to save someone. The next day, I woke up early, got up, walked around the house, looked at my walls, my kitchen, my life, and inside, I had a strange but light feeling. I had finally regained my sense of myself. I didn't know everything that would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't live someone else's life instead of my own, and if that meant leaving, then I would leave. With dignity, with clarity, and with the hope that ahead lay a future where I was with a person, not a child stuck in an adult's body.